TV advertising seen as something which is big and expensive and scary and probably out of reach, and it's what big boys do who've got big ad agencies, and it's just perception.
Mm-hmm.
Just misperception.
Yeah, well, we're all re-energised. We've had what? Was it cheese and onion McCoys that you had there?
No, I had salt and vinegar squares.
I had the cheese and onion McCoys. They're very nice.
I wonder if the cheese and onion McCoys have got the same, like, cheesiness in the grab bags versus the multi-packs, or whether it's just a beef conspiracy.
You know, the best part is when you actually try this out and realise how correct I've been all along.
I will give it to you. I will give it to you. As I said, I'll believe science. Okay, so
yeah, that's fair.
Once we get that scientifically proven, which we'll do,
that's fair.
I'm happy to be taste tester. Pick that up.
That was the first Mars bar I've had in about.
You had a Mars bar as well?
That's all I had.
Oh.
As well, I didn't have anything else.
Well, he's had
Yeah, I did.
confectionery as well as savory.
Because I'm the fattest and I
Matthew.
paid for it. Argue with us.
He's got you there, Mark. Well, in this podcast, we'd like to talk about. There's quite a lot to cover here, so it might be a tour because we've never done this before. I've got no idea. And Matthew can go on but we want to talk about TV advertising in this one. So TV advertising from the point of view of you, the client, someone that's got a business that wants to advertise on TV. A lot of our clients are people that are advertising. It's the first time, their first go at TV advertising, and they have a lot of questions, which is fair because it can be quite confusing about where to start, who to go to first. Do I need a creative agency first? Do I need a media buyer? Do I need a production company? And how do they all work together? So there's a lot to get through there, and that's before you even get onto the process of putting the ad through all the stuff it needs to go through. So we've got quite a lot to cover, but just ahead of time we're going to talk about things like how much does a TV advert cost?
Ooh.
What's the protest? What's the process? Who are Clearcast? Because quite often people have heard the name, and it's strikes fear into their heart. So we can debunk some of the myths around Clearcast. Who does what? Is there a good return on investment from TV advertising, or is it old hat nowadays compared to internet online advertising? What's an impression in relation to TV advertising? What's a TVR? And can I be on after Coronation Street? That is an FAQ, that one, isn't it? So
technically you want to be on in Coronation Street, but I get your point.
Yeah. So let's start with my company wants to make a TV commercial. Where do I start, Matthew? What's your number?
Where should you start, or where do people start?
Well, I think both, really.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, both. Yeah.
Well, I think it depends on who they are, because if they're the owner of the business, and if it's a quote-unquote smaller business, then quite often I think they'll go either directly to the broadcaster, which is pretty unusual, but like using our region, I think there's still plenty of people who do just approach ITV TNTs. There's definitely plenty of people who approach Sky, but that is generally for AdSmart, which is a different thing, and it's kind of almost more like a digital buy. So it depends on what their experience and comfort level is, because there's also a lot of people who've only done radio, and usually they're dealing directly with the radio, and then they're kind of not quite sure where to turn, which is a bit strange, I suppose. But basically, you can either go direct to the broadcaster, you can come to a media agency of some kind, or you can come to a production agency. But I don't think that the majority of people assume that they can come to a production agency first.
Why not?
Because it's seen as TV advertising, seen as something which is big and expensive and scary and probably out of reach, and it's what big boys do who've got big ad agencies, and it's just perception. Just misperception.
So this person potentially hasn't even got a concept. All they know is we want to push this product or service. You know, they might have some information about the kind of target audience that they want to aim it at. Does that person need to go to an agency from that point? Or could they go to any of those other outlets first?
Well, I wouldn't say it's potentially they don't have a concept. It's like 99 times of 100 they haven't got a concept, and why would they? That's not their thing, is it? They wouldn't necessarily go to the radio station and say, I want to be on the radio and here's my advert. They go to the experts, so using that as an example, and say, I want to be on the radio, you tell me what it should be. So the starting point should always be what you're trying to communicate, what action are you trying to trigger. Obviously, typically for TV, it's a fairly direct response mechanism, which isn't to be confused with an actual direct response campaign, but generally people want to be on TV to build a brand and get sales, and sometimes one thing comes before the other. But no, they don't have to go to an agency. They could, in theory, go directly to a broadcaster and say, this is what I'm trying to do. But then the reality of it is, whilst the broadcasters do produce some ads in-house, they haven't got the capacity to do what we can do. So certainly as it relates to Sky, certainly they are much more likely to then say to them, right, well, we'll deal with your campaign directly, but we now recommend you go and speak to one of these 3 production companies.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's say that they do knock on our door first and say, I need a TV commercial. They've probably got an idea of when they want it on air,
mm-hmm.
and who they want to hit. So where do they go from there with you? What's the first conversation you have there?
Well, the things that people always want to know is, how much does it cost? How long does it take? The answer is, how much it costs depends on what the advert actually is and how it's going to be used. Those are the 2 main things. So it's not impossible, but it's not very practical to give a price idea up front. I do think most people assume that it's going to take some time. You don't the people who come to you and say, I want to be on telly in a month, is usually like an agency that's been speaking to their client for 6 months to get them to this point, and now they've finally dragged them to the point of spending money. They're like, all right, well, now we're going to get the ad producer request to get that done in like 4 weeks. So it doesn't tend to be the clients, when you're working directly with them, who are like that. They assume things are going to take some time. I would say the only kind of slightly strange assumption, just from where we sit, is like quite often they assume that they have to write the script, which I think comes from they know what their business is and they know what their customers want to hear, which is invaluable information, and we'll obviously get that from them. But in that initial conversation, it's like, what is this? What's the outcome you're looking to achieve? When, ideally, would you like to be on TV? And it's not about us telling them how much it'll cost. It's more like, what do you think you want to spend? And obviously the production cost generally is going to be a small percentage of the overall campaign cost, because you've got to make a good ad, but more importantly, arguably, you've got to put it in front of the right people, because as we know, a very simple creative execution can outperform a very fancy ad if the campaign's right.
Mm-hmm. So is it worth talking more about the campaign and how that's planned out and who does that work before moving into what the creative process of coming up with the production side of the commercial is?
We're going to talk about some scary things as well, because just leaping off from what you've said there, I think on the conversations that we have with TV production, it's kind of the usage of, like, actors, voiceover, and if they're going to rerun the ad. So that's always like, I feel like clients are always kind of blindsided a little bit when those costs come through, and dealing with that can be sometimes tricky, I feel.
Well, that's why we have the conversation up front, and that's why, in general, we always say to people, don't pay for usage that you think you might need. As an example, you think you're going to be on TV for 12 months, but you don't know that, particularly if you haven't done it before. So if you know that your budget is going to pay for 4 months, and then you're going to stop and assess, then pay for 4 months usage. Because otherwise you are literally handing money over that you might, 5 months down the line decide is being wasted. So we always give that advice anyway. But the more pertinent thing is, like, you can get on the Sky and run an AdSmart campaign for like less than $5,000, right? It's not expensive to get on TV, but you get what you pay for. So if you are, I'll just make an example up. If you're a little single site shop and you've got a Black Friday sale, so it's only going to run for a couple of days, and all you want to do is go onto TV for a week in your local area, hit a certain demographic, and say the sale's on between these dates, get in the shop. That is an example of where you might only spend about $5,000 on the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, your production cost is probably going to be more than your campaign. But in the majority of cases, you should be, as I say, people used to say sort of 15 to 20% of your overall spend should be carved off for your production. But it just depends on what the advert needs to be. The most important thing, I think, is look at the whole spend holistically. So if you've got $50,000 in total, and that's for your campaign and your production, then because of how we work, we know that the important thing in terms of the ongoing success of the campaign is in putting as much money into the campaign side as possible. So yes, we want budget to make an advert that's going to work, but if the whole thing's $50,000, you kind of, or even in that first meeting, I'm already thinking, well, probably the advert's going to have to be produced for about 10 tops, because that's a reasonable ratio to make sure that, they can actually put it in front of the right people.
Sure.
So it goes hand in hand. It's not about saying that's how much a TV ad should cost or that's how much you should spend on a campaign. I mean, there are certain levels that you shouldn't go under, otherwise you kind of just, kind of wasting your money basically. But if it's just about the context of the whole and saying, well, that feels about balanced.
Well, can I just ask you to clarify what the term usage means and why am I paying for it?
It means exactly that. It means how often and how wide geographically the advert's going to be seen. So these days that means that you could run for a week in a single postcode area, which might, depending on the postcode area, have 10,000 households in it, tops.
Who does that money go to, though?
It goes, the usage fees for?
The usage fees, yeah.
It goes to the talent, so actors, models, voiceover people.
Why? Because
you need them, for one thing, and because that's how the fee structure in the industry is worked out. There's two parts to every fee. There's the fee to get the person to show up on set on the day and do the acting, or to step into the voiceover booth and record. But that's usually a fraction of the overall fee, because the overall fee is based on the usage. So, I mean, we've just sat and eaten a couple of Mars bars before this. We know someone that booked a Mars campaign, and because it was going to be used for months and months all over the country, TV, cinema, etc., he got paid $50,000 to be in it. But equally, we could hire him for an advert that's going to be seen in the Northeast for a month, and you'd be happy to be paid £1,000.
Yeah, and it's related to their image, it's their image rights, and it's technically you could say like the image would kind of be worn out if they were being seen all over the place. So they're being kind of compensated for that side of things, aren't they?
Well, there's that, but there's also it all goes into the overall spend. It's like if someone's come along and buying £1 million advertising campaign, then it makes sense that there's a mechanism in place so that the person who's acting in it and who's the face of that is getting paid, in that case, who knows, $50,000, say, because that's the relative value to what they're doing. But if someone's come along and spending $15,000 on a campaign, that's the bottom line. It's not just about, I mean, it is a recognized system that all the agencies and talent use, so that's the way it is. That's the level playing field. We're all working from the same playbook basically. But that was quite American, wasn't it? But
I would give you that one.
But yeah, but there's also effectively just an inherent fairness element to it as well. It's like if you're over here as the face of this company that's putting millions of pounds in advertising, you should be getting your fair share of it.
So this is, I just want to make sure we'll cover off everything that's totally clear. Using that example where the actor got $50,000 usage fees for the Mars campaign, if Mars decided to rerun that commercial in a year's time for a few weeks, that actor would be paid again purely based on wherever they used it and for how long, based on these calculators that they've got.
Yeah, and to further clarify it, let's say they got paid 50 grand for 12 months usage across national TV and cinema. If Mars the next year go, actually, we've got a little promotion, we just want to run that ad again for 2 weeks, and we're going to run it in Newcastle and Birmingham, then they're going to get a fraction of the 50,000 usage fee because that's appropriate, because it's a much smaller usage.
Okay, I think that's usage fees explained quite nicely anyway.
Very well. Yes, thank you for that, Matthew.
Quite welcome, Mark.
So we've covered usage there, which is obviously a big part of the cost of the commercial, and it's linked with the media plan of the commercial as well, which you said is absolutely vital to the success of the commercial. You can make the best TV commercial in the world, but if no booker sees it, it doesn't matter, does it?
It's not even if no one sees it, it's if the wrong people see it.
Yeah, good point. So what's in place in say our process to do media planning?
Well, the short answer is we've got someone that we work with who's an expert of about 25 years in the industry and has worked across all kinds of campaigns of all sizes. I mean, I'm using him as an example because he is kind of, for want of a better phrase, our in-house person, but we also work with various agencies and we work directly with broadcasters. So I suppose the true answer is, when we're first speaking to the client, there's an assessment as to what the best fit is for them. And there's someone recently who we've put on TV and we've worked directly with the broadcaster because that was they knew exactly what they wanted. They had actually done a lot of research into their own customer base. They knew what they wanted. They knew which audience they wanted to hit. Thankfully for them, it was about the cheapest audience you could hit. So there was no reason to kind of overcomplicate it and get anyone else involved. It was a case of actually, well, in this case, it's just about putting that money into the campaign. You're right, we agree with your assessment of your audience. In other cases, some people literally don't know their audience.
And does that assessment of an audience again come with a cost allocated to it? If they're going to go to a broadcaster, do they charge for that service, or is that something that's kind of part of the package?
Typically no. I mean, again, using Sky as an example, if you're spending over a certain level with them, we're talking tens of thousands per month on certain of their products, i.e. Sky AdSmart as an example, then they do offer services where what they're doing in that case, because as I said before, AdSmart is TV, but it's not TV. It's in terms of planning and buying, it's more like an online campaign. You're buying impressions and you're buying an audience, as opposed to, say, ITV, where you're buying an audience, but you're buying an audience that's effectively a clever estimate. With Sky AdSmart, you are actually buying that audience. So if you want to be in the homes of people who are 50 plus and who have 2 mobile phones on contract and a car on their driveway, you can hit that person specifically. So that's the difference. But if you're spending the right amount of money with them, then they will basically take your data and build an audience profile from their system from your data, which is obviously good for a lot of people. So we did a campaign for a car dealership, and long story short, they were able to work with Sky, overlay the 2 data sets, and at the end of the campaign say, that person bought that car because they saw that advert.
Brilliant.
Which is very good. But that's not the norm, because the norm is more like the other example, which is this client says, we know our customers are 55 or 50 plus women. It's a daytime TV audience. These are the programs that they watch. We know because we've asked them for the last 2 years since we started the business. This is probably the job they've got, etc., etc. So this is where we want to be. And that campaign is currently on air. And as of a couple of days ago, I was told there's people, it's been on for 10 days and people are coming in the shop and saying, I've seen your advert on TV. So clearly they were right about their audience.
But generally you go to a media buyer and you can have some information or no information, but they will help you make your budget work as well as possible and hit the audience demographic that you need to hit.
Whoever's doing the media planning, whether it's us with our partners or whether it's the broadcaster, everyone's motivated by the same thing, which is to plan a campaign that has as little wastage as possible. In other words, hits the target audience as much as it possibly can, so that you'll get a return and that you'll advertise again. Like, the broadcasters aren't giving you a raw deal because you're not working with an independent person. Like, they want you to come back and spend more money. It's in everyone's interest for the campaign to work. So that's the thing. It's about trying to eliminate as much wastage as possible. So again, going back when AdSmart first launched, we got a taxi firm back on the air who hadn't done TV in a while, because the only option they had before AdSmart was to go on ITV. You used to be able to split the region, but you couldn't anymore. So they operate in Gateshead and a little bit in Newcastle, but they were advertising in Alnwick and Berwick. It's just wastage. But then AdSmart comes along and says, oh, actually, and this was in the very early days when they had only 100 ways that you could pick an audience, whereas now it's about 2,000, I think. So they came along and said, well, we'll just advertise in the Gateshead and Newcastle local authority areas. Problem solved.
So in the process that obviously we're going to talk through, where does a customer decide or need to have that target audience? Like, is it beneficial that they have that first before they put forward an idea, or do we get some people coming to us with an idea and not really understanding the target audience? What's the, how do we help them get over that hurdle?
Depends what they're trying to do. So we did a campaign earlier this year where you could argue they had an idea but they didn't have a target audience, and that was for various reasons, but long and short of it was there was a gap in their own research for legitimate reasons. So whilst they were trying to plug that gap and do new research, they just wanted to be back on TV and just remind people of their existence, so it was just a brand ad. So in that case, it didn't matter so much that we didn't know the audience, because we knew the type of message they were trying to get out and how they wanted to present themselves. But that's not the norm. In most cases, we can't make a good advert if we don't know who the audience is. That's the starting point. Who we're talking to and what we're trying to say, what we're trying to sell them, what do you want them to buy or sign up for or download or whatever.
So I think we're already skirting around the beginning of the process that people would have when they engaged us, because, and excuse me, we would always say, you can come to us with nothing. You can just say, no, we need to be on TV, we need to be shifting this product.
Which is what most people do.
It is. There's a lot of time people have got maybe a concept. They might, as you say, just randomly have a script written. But the point is, you can come with nothing and we can take it from there, and we can assist in kind of doing some of the research around, well, who are the target audience? Because sometimes it's specific to a product that they might be selling anyway, so it might just be one part of their offering overall. But either way, we would get involved at that stage. And in fact, I think we've said that's always our preference, that even if you come with a more formed idea, we would kind of say, let's just hang on a second here, let's just go back through the process and talk about what do you actually need out of this.
The biggest problem when people come in with an idea is, usually with the best will in the world, they're trying to cram 90 seconds of screen time or 2 minutes of screen time into a 30-second advert, which is just because they're not in the habit of making videos and they don't understand what screen time actually is and how to kind of work around it, basically. Which that's partly why we're here, because then we take that. Like, the biggest part of the process is condensing. So it's about, a 30-second voiceover script is about 75 words. It's not a lot. You've got to be very economical.
And you're right, they will come along and they'll try to get everything in. I think sometimes they'll come along with their idea of what they want to say, but not necessarily what the audience needs to hear.
Absolutely.
There's often a case of, like, they want to get 15 points across because 7 of them are really important to them for internal reasons, but the harsh reality is the audience doesn't care about those things. They care about the other 8.
Yeah, and there's obviously we're client confidentiality and everything, but there was a commercial fairly recently that we're planning where the client was adamant they wanted the commercial to be funny, and I looked at the ideas we were putting down. I looked at their brief, and read through it all, and even from their own words of the brief, it's like, you don't want it to be funny. That is not what you need here. You need it to be, actually what they needed is it needs to be cool. It's kind of playing to an audience that's kind of more like that. Maybe a little bit of humour, but trying to go at all laughs was just wrong. But it was obviously just something that it was a word that got said early on, and they became fixated on it. And when I actually asked the question, why? No one could answer it. And it's like, well, I think we should just drop that then. Like, let's actually just go with what you need here, because that's going to be more effective for you than trying to get a cheap laugh for no reason.
For them, maybe it was just a starting point for them to
Probably
to move it forward, which I suppose that's the process that we do. We look at what they've given us from a creative side of view and have the years behind us to be able to make those informed decisions at that level straight away.
Mm-hmm. It's a bit like, have you ever seen these people that sculpt things on matchsticks?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely minuscule.
Right.
Writing a TV script feels like that, because there's so much people want to cram into it. And how many times have I said this today to people? 30 seconds is not a long time. It's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to go through our process to understand what it is that you need to get out there. We can translate that into what's going to have the impact, make people take notice of the commercial.
Mm-hmm.
The people that you care about, the worst thing you can do is try and please everybody with a commercial. It's like, no, just worry about the people that are going to come back and buy what it is that you want them to buy. And we've got a lot of experience of doing that. So as harsh as it might sound, sometimes people come with ideas. We're not going to rip them up, but we're going to put them to one side and kind of go through the process.
Yeah,
Either way.
no one's ever presented an idea like in bad faith, you know. What?
Just thought I'd look at the camera and raise an eyebrow.
I see.
Oh, yeah, he's
Dramatic.
playing up to that camera. Okay, so I think we should probably end this one here, because there's still some stuff that we're going to get through, but we've gone through for quite a while there. So if you want to do just a general outro now.
Saying what?
Thanks for
Be
listening.
sure
Thanks
to
for
like
watching.
and, be sure to like and subscribe.
I know you're going to throw up in your mouth, but oh fuck!
What? What are you going to
What?
suggest?
No, I thought you paused. I thought you did that face.
You thought I froze?
I thought you'd done
I
that
was
face
doing-
because that's a very American way of saying be sick. Because I was just about to give you shit for getting gas and gas mixed up yesterday, which is a fucking disgrace, by the way. How, man? Go on, argue with us. Or just do the right thing and say, yeah,
At the end of
that's out of order.
It was an honest mistake. I was when he said it, I was thinking he was talking about oil prices, which obviously do impact petrol prices. It was only afterwards I realised, he said gas. It wasn't. I wasn't literally confusing petrol with gasoline. I'm not Gavin Randall.
Yep.